So.
South California.
California started. That's going to be late. 5. This one's going to be starting now.
You're doing the
Start. Up for the countdown.
Where
are we? Rolling.
You're already on.
Rolling. No audio.
Document which he was sworn to uphold.
Now, I will not have you libel Abraham Lincoln.
I don't understand the problem with registering guns. We register cars.
Mark Levine brings you the news the government doesn't want you to know.
Today, an explosive story about connections between white supremacists and Islamic terrorists.
When there's a conflict between Scalia's conservative values and the Constitution of the United States, he throws away the Constitution.
We do have secret prisons. That is not what America's all about.
Let's go to Mark in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Wants to spot. Good evening, America. Welcome to the Inside Scoop. It was a tough 2 weeks for Mitt Romney. It started on September 11th when he broke the truce that the campaigns had agreed on not to go political on September 11th and instead threw potshots at the administration for their policy in Libya at the time when our consulate was burning. He later found out that our ambassador had been killed, but continued the next day to double down, attacking apparently the administration, saying that a crazy, idiotic, bigoted video was perhaps not the best thing. It went on to find a video dating back to May where Mitt Romney attended a $50,000 a plate fundraiser. This was exposed by Mother Jones, where he attacked half of Americans, well, more specifically 47% of Americans, as moochers, as not worthy of him being president for them. These were people who he said felt they were victims. Half of America felt they were victims, entitled to things like health care and food and shelter. Well, then came the third part. Mitt Romney released his tax returns. We find out he had an effective tax rate of about 10%, 10.5%, so low that he actually paid more taxes to bump it up to 14% just so he'd get better headlines. Of course, he can amend his tax return and take it back to 10.5% after the election. It's gotten so bad for Willard Mitt Romney that his unfavorable rating among the American people has hit the highest for any candidate for president since favorable ratings were recorded. It's at 50%, higher than losers such as Michael Dukakis or George Bush Sr. prior to his devastating loss to Bill Clinton. 50% of Americans view him unfavorably. Conservatives, a lot of them are sinking ship. People like Peggy Noonan, Joe Scarborough, they're getting off the Romney train like, I don't know, rats on a sinking ship. While at the same time, Mitt Romney insists there will be no reboot. He's not going to turn around his campaign. He's going to continue in the exact same direction, which it seems to me is basically not telling the American people what he will do when he gets elected, but only focuses criticism on President Obama. Well, for some insight from someone who doesn't agree with me all the time, actually almost none of the time, I'm turning to Matt Robbins. Now, Matt Robbins is the president? Executive Director of Americans for a New Majority, as a conservative think tank. I should say that Matt was, frankly, not a big supporter of Mitt Romney in the primaries, but as a conservative, I bet he's in a bind right now. Matt, how's Mitt doing, Matt?
Well, I'm glad you brought up Mike Dukakis, because if you remember the old Saturday Night Live skit where John Lovitz played him in the debates, he said, "I can't believe I'm losing to this guy." And that's got to be how Mitt's got to be feeling right now with this president, with insane inflation, with insane unemployment, with jobs in the toilet. I'll amend that later, but we'll talk about it.
All right.
Food and corn and milk are going up. That'll be the story after the election.
I don't see a lot of inflation.
You'll see it, and we'll be back to stagflation after that. But he's got to be just wondering, waiting for the anvil to fall on his head at this point. He's got to feel like Wile E. Coyote on the old Roadrunner cartoons. I think the joke that was the most popular and circulating among center-right circles this past week was the Romney campaign is so dead, the Mormons are about to start praying for it and baptize it. So it is a rough and tumble game. Team Romney has been on the payroll and on the entourage. A lot of these operatives have been on the payroll for about 5 years now. Mitt running for president.
He's been running since 2007.
Absolutely. A lot of them went out to California. Meg Whitman, Carly Fiorina came back and ran this iteration, this etch-a-sketch, if you will. And we're seeing the results of that. Mitt's a loyalist to a fault. And that's going to give him a tremendous disservice.
Now, you supported, I forgot, Rick Perry, Rick Perry, I believe, was your candidate.
Was our philosophical pick. he not only failed to launch, he exploded on the launch pad.
Would he have been, in hindsight, a stronger candidate than Mitt Romney?
I think anybody with a more delineated and strong, coherent message. I think Mitt Romney is a eminently decent man. The tax returns you referred to.
I'm not attacking his decency, and I never have.
And anyone who knows him, anyone who's ever worked for him, worked with him, known his family, will sing his praises. That's a different characteristic than a politician, a candidate. In other words, a product.
Is it time for Mitt Romney to tell us what he would do if he were president?
It'd be nice, wouldn't it?
I mean, it was shocking to me to sit in his convention and comparing the Democratic convention where Bill Clinton.
You were in Tampa.
No, just watch it on TV.
Yeah.
But Bill Clinton, who I think we can agree is the best living politician of our age. Most Republicans concede that point. Ronald Reagan's dead. I think he'd have between Reagan and Clinton.
I appreciate the caveat.
No, between Reagan and Clinton, it would be a tough match between greatest politician in my lifetime. But to hear Bill Clinton get all wonky and he giving details about everything from welfare to health care and the audience ate it up and the American people ate it up. Bill Clinton's speech was rated the best speech of either convention, including President Obama's speech. Mitt Romney's speech seemed really empty. To me, Mitt Romney's speech seemed a lot like Clint Eastwood's chair. There was nobody there.
The convention was one of the poorer run that I've attended, and I've been to several. Logistically, security-wise, they kept waiting for the occupiers to come, who never did. And I think he had a real trouble. I don't think anybody can tell you out of the top 5 names that are circulated all the time who's writing the speeches, who's calling the shots, who's calling the message, who's communicating these things. And that's a real fundamental problem. You had Ryan, who came on with buckets of message, so much so that now they've put him in a closet somewhere. And you have, I still couldn't tell you, and I don't think most rank-and-file conservatives could tell you what Romney stands for.
Well, let's talk about Paul Ryan, because it seems that Romney's being kind of schizophrenic. So first he chooses Paul Ryan, which is definitely a reach out.
This is my shock face, by the way, that Romney's being schizophrenic.
I forgot who it was. I forgot who the Republican was that said that everyone should be for Mitt Romney because he supported their position at one time or another at some point in his life. I have that
when
video
Ted
somewhere.
Kennedy can say, I'm going
to be better than Ted Kennedy on gay rights and abortion.
You got it.
So he picks Ryan, and that's definitely a reach to his conservative base. That's a reach to people like you.
I don't think he had any other choices. I mean, look at the field. I mean, Christie wasn't going to retire, wasn't going to resign as governor.
I thought Marco Rubio was the obvious choice.
Rubio was not going to do it. It was not going to happen. He did not want to fall
I predicted wrongly.
He did not want to fall prey to the Obama syndrome. He didn't. And I know you can make some of the same arguments with Ryan, but at least Ryan's got the pedigree and the experience.
What do you mean the Obama syndrome?
Very, very scant resume, very sparse resume, and a very few years of public service.
I see.
And straight to the ticket.
I see. Well, there's always boring guy, Tim Pawlenty. I mean, a nice.
I'm sorry. I just fell asleep when you said that.
Or Rob Portman of Ohio.
I'm totally asleep while you're talking.
Okay, so you felt he had to choose Ryan, but here's my point.
It was a bold move. It was one of the rare bold moves of the campaign.
But he reaches out to conservatives by choosing Paul Ryan, who has, let's face it, a message that's quite controversial. I mean, he wants to end Medicare and make it into a voucher system, wants to privatize Social Security. I know he wouldn't say end it.
Not completely true.
To me, when you make Medicare to coupons, that ends it as the way we know it. It's a new thing.
Because it runs so well
It's a new thing. But so he reaches out to his conservative base. And Paul Ryan gives a stronger speech, I think, than Mitt Romney's speech. It happened to be full of deceptions, but it was a strong speech. But then, as you say, they're putting him in the closet. They're tamping him down. They found out that Paul Ryan's he's a nice-looking guy. He seems like a great friend, but his ideas are not so popular with the American people, these pure conservative ending entitlement type ideas.
I'll go to the old quote about the vice president. He's not being worth a bucket of warm spit. I mean, they put Joe Biden in sort of the same box.
John Nance Garner
last
said
couple
that.
of months,
and actually he didn't say spit. Did you know that?
No, I did not.
No, he actually said, and I think I can say this on the air. It wasn't worth a warm bucket of piss.
Oh, nice.
And it later went down in history as spit because they couldn't say that on.
That's a little bit. But we put crazy Uncle Joe in the attic too. I mean, vice presidents don't go, and candidates especially don't garner a lot of respect to begin with.
I have a lot of respect for Joe Biden.
We'll
get to that.
You're one of the few.
I love Joe Biden, actually. Joe Biden, to me, is like a really large, happy golden retriever that jumps on you and loves you and might knock over a few things in the process, but
might ruin a few foreign countries.
Not foreign countries so much as he might get some spittle on things. But no, I love Joe Biden. But let me back to Romney. So
sure.
Is he the conservative that picked Paul Ryan? Is he the guy who appears at the fundraiser and says, don't worry about half Americans, they're moochers? Or is he the guy whose mother proudly admits that his father was on welfare and that they made it, that he came here poor and made it in this country? Does Romney really believe that Americans on Social Security or on veterans benefits, or getting a student loan to go to college. The 47% that he's talking about, let's talk about who they are.
Let's do.
The working poor. Does he really think that they're all moochers, that they all are victims, they feel entitled? Or is this just something he threw out to some rich fundraisers that he doesn't really believe?
I don't believe it is his personal belief. I think, anytime you have surreptitious video being taken, whether it's Obama or Romney, you have things that are said in context and in that crowd, and we all know that politicians tailor their remarks. Those are very popular undercurrents in the Tea Party movement. Those are very popular ideas among the
are they true?
The populace. I don't believe they're true. I think there is a subclass of Americans who probably defraud and waste and abuse government monies.
Oh, I'm sure there's
but
some.
It's not.
I'm sure there's some.
Absolutely.
No, I mean, maybe 2 or 3%.
And you and I disagree
like
philosophically on the overarching programs. I mean, whether it's the New Deal, the Fair Deal,
and I think
or
you'd
the Great
agree
Society,
that there
these
are
programs are enormous.
Well, and we'll talk about that in a second, but I think you'd agree with me that there are rich people who abuse the system and take government money they don't deserve, just as there are poor people who abuse and take money they don't deserve.
But I don't think Romney has a strong. I mean, he may think that among and say that among his wealthy donor friends. To me, Mitt Romney has one overriding ambition, and that is to succeed where his father failed.
To become president of the United States.
Absolutely. And you could see it at the convention. You could see there was a moment of silence when Mitt got to the stage, and you could almost see him looking up at the sky and saying, Dad, I made it to the nomination. I got further than you did. And I admire him for that drive, but I don't think he knows what comes next.
I don't think he knows what he wants to do as president.
Neither
I think he
does
wants to
this president, I would say,
president
as well.
I promise you we'll have all the time for you to go after Obama.
I'm not going tit for tat.
No.
I think they're equally murky and nebulous candidates.
No. We will definitely have a chance for you to go after Obama, I promise. But just finishing on Mitt here,
sure.
I agree with you. This man wants to be president, but I'm not so sure he knows what he wants to do as president. To me, what the clip showed, either Mitt Romney seriously believes what he said, in which case he's calling half of America moochers. I actually agree with you. I don't think he really does.
No, he doesn't.
Or what it really shows is, I think, the true Mitt Romney willing to say or do anything to please an audience to become president. This is a phony.
As if every presidential candidate doesn't tailor their remarks to the donor class and the Wall Street investors and whomever you're talking to at the time. I assure you, there are remarks Obama has made
from saying things that you fundamentally don't believe. But he doubled down on it. But here's the thing. When they asked him, they said, well, did you really believe this? Right. He said, yes, I believed every word I said.
Because they've learned the lesson too late about communications. They've learned to go strong or go home, to go big or go home.
So he says something that you agree he doesn't believe.
Right. And
then he doubles
we know.
He doubles down on it. He did the same thing in Libya. Right? He attacked.
Because this is their new tack.
He attacked the embassy in Cairo. I mean, obviously, whatever the embassy put out, that wasn't the Obama administration putting it out.
You understand PR and communications. They're doing what a professional would tell them to do. You don't show weakness at this stage of the game.
How about having some integrity? How about actually saying what you believe and meaning what you say and telling the American people what you believe in, rather than just saying what you think will help get you elected?
I agree. Is Obama a strong, lifelong Christian, or does he believe we're all bitter clingers to religion? And does he throw his pastor under the bus at the first sign of trouble?
He's somewhere in between.
But you see what I'm getting at.
We can talk about that. All right, we're going to take a break, folks. If you want to join the discussion, we encourage you to do so. Agree or disagree with Matt or me. This is your chance to call in and add your 2 cents. Just dial in toll-free, 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275, or that local number on your screen. We'll be right back after this.
Artists and artisans to find hope to earn a living while enriching the lives of all of us. Empowered Women International, making a better America every day. For more information on Empowered Women International's educational programs or to make a tax-free donation, contact cfrip at AOL.com.
You'd think it would be easy to tell which kids have trouble with their eyesight. But that's not always the case. Even though 1 in 4 children may have a vision problem, eye doctors tell us the symptoms aren't always so obvious. We do know that 80% of all childhood learning is visual. And without good vision, kids can have trouble learning to read and may fall behind in school. For clues on how to spot the real-life signs of childhood vision problems and what parents can do, visit checkyearly.com. A public service message from the Vision Council of America, and reading is fundamental.
That's not good, right here. Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Mark Levine. So the candidates are down to the last 6 weeks of the campaign, and the Mitt Romney campaign seems to be in damage control mode. It seems it's a gaffe a day, or at least a gaffe a week, and conservatives are quite concerned. So let me ask you, Matt, as a conservative, as the executive director of the Americans for a New Majority, do you have any hope for the Mitt Romney win in November?
The fat lady has not sung. She has not, and we all know that
Well, the debates can change
from
things.
decades in politics. You know how long 6 weeks can be in politics.
That's true.
Any number of things on the foreign policy front could happen. Any number of things on the jobs report side could happen.
But you also know that the candidate that's ahead in late September...
I know what Gallup says since Truman.
9 times out of 10. Since Harry Truman, and let's face it, we're in a very different country from where we were in 1948.
I also know that no president's been where Obama's been in the popularity ratings and won at that point.
That's true.
Yeah, so
that's true. Although he's actually gotten, on the latest polls have shown him over 50%.
Some of those are weighted a little weirdly.
That includes Gallup. So let me ask you this. I predict, and I've made this prediction before, I'll make a prediction right now. I predict that President Obama will win re-election. I predict the Senate the Democrats will retain the Senate, but they might lose a seat or two.
Interesting.
I predict that the Republicans will retain the House. So they're going to lose some seats as well. So I predict that So
you think it's going to be a wave election with Obama?
Well, not a wave election. I didn't say the Democrats would take the House.
But he'll have coattails.
I think he will.
You're talking about losses in the House.
I think that
just 2 years ago.
But I also think the Democrats are going to lose a seat or two in the Senate. Yeah. So that's not quite.
I think we'll achieve a numeric.
I think we'll get maybe 10 seats in the House, something like that. It's hard because of the gerrymandering for us to do to get that 25.
Imagine that, them protecting themselves.
My prediction is we're going to end up with pretty much the situation where we've been in the last 2 years. The Democrats control the Senate by a whisker, certainly not enough to stop a filibuster. The Republicans control the House, perhaps by smaller majorities. If the American people re-elect President Obama, will we finally get away from the just say no Republicans in Congress and have them say, look, the American people have spoken, let's cooperate. The deficit's huge. You talk about the deficit all the time. Let's raise taxes on millionaires. People like Mitt Romney.
I don't talk about that.
Well, when people like Mitt Romney, when his tax rate is 10%, now I know he paid 14%, but he can get it all back after the election.
Right.
His tax rate is 10%. He can afford to pay $500,000 more without even feeling it. He can still have a horse in the Olympics. He can still have his car garage. He really doesn't suffer in lifestyle by paying a lot more in taxes. We do have this massive deficit. Will the Republicans, will the conservatives recognize, if Obama's reelected, that, hey, on this particular argument, the American people who polls show 60-70% believe we should raise taxes on the rich, back to the Clinton era, not back to Eisenhower 90% era, but 39, something like that.
I'll take the tax rates from Clinton era if we can go back to the spending of the Clinton era. I'll take that.
Well, let's talk about the spending of the Clinton era, because you know that the major difference between this era and the Clinton era, let's talk about them. One is those tax cuts, the Bush tax cuts, not just for the rich, but for the middle class as well. Another big difference is...
Remember the checks we all got in the mail?
Right, which socialist Bernie Sanders, actually. That was his idea, and Bush agreed to it.
Probably one of the rare occasions.
It's interesting. Obama's actually given greater checks than those checks in the mail. But
you just don't get them in your hands.
Economists told him that rather than give you one check of $300 or whatever, that if you give out a little bit each month in every paycheck, say, $40
every couple of weeks,
$50 a month. Okay, that actually gets you more over a year. It gets you 600 instead of 300. And
but you don't feel it.
People spend that money more, but they don't. So it's bad politically, but economically it's better for the economy. And he chose that route, which was bigger than the Bush.
Central planning. That's marvelous.
Again, Obama looking out for the interest of the country rather than his own political interest.
I love how you frame the entire piece that you just started with, as if that 9 months with Ted Kennedy, and if that filibuster-proof, majority in the Senate
wasn't 9 months.
existed. How long was it?
Kennedy,
Obama had a complete window to do whatever he wanted to do.
Ted Kennedy.
And he chose to give the hand off to Pelosi and Reid and say, do your health care and mute me on the speakerphone while you're at it.
Ted Kennedy lived 6 weeks during a 60-member Democratic Congress.
So he was not able to vote.
Well, he did. He voted in his dying 6 weeks for the health care bill.
Yeah.
He did. And this actually was July and August. And August
there were some other promises
recess.
made, as the Telemundo crowd will
It's
tell
also
you.
true, to be fair, after Kennedy died, there was another 2 to 3 month period where they appointed a Democrat in his place before Scott Walker. I want to be fair. But it wasn't 9 months, and it was a very limited time frame there.
When you run the Senate, you run the Senate.
Well, you really don't, because as you know, Ben Nelson is more conservative than liberal. That was our 60th
that's
vote.
y'all's problem.
That's the best we could do in Nebraska.
That's y'all's problem.
That's how it works. That's the best we could do in Nebraska.
Yeah.
Just like Scott Brown is the best you can do in Massachusetts.
Right,
I mean,
Scott Brown.
Right, that's the way it works.
It's the way the country is divided.
The point is whether we should live in a minority gridlock country. Whether the Republicans, as you know, used the filibuster more in the last 4 years under Obama.
They felt they had to.
That every Congress in all of American history combined.
You spoke about polls a few minutes ago. I mean, poll after poll after poll showed the American people not wanting the Affordable Health Care Act, and yet this House, that Senate, and that president literally rammed it through.
Well,
damn the torpedoes.
I will agree with you that.
So the reaction to that, you understand, the reaction and counter reactions in politics. The wave election of 2010 said, stop, no more of this. If we have to get gridlock, we'll take gridlock for a few more years until we can get this guy out.
Except the Republican, I have 2 points to make. One, I want to make it about the Affordable Health Care Act. But first on the question of gridlock, let's face it, the Republicans didn't do gridlock after the wave election of 2010. They did gridlock after the wave election of 2008. Mitch McConnell
did it from day one.
The leader of the Republicans said, our goal is that Obama fail.
Yes.
Our goal is that he is a first-term president. Rush Limbaugh said, we want Obama to fail.
And I think you have to expand that remark to reflect Obama's policies. Nobody wants Obama personally. Everybody likes the guy.
Fine.
Family man,
but the point
all that.
is that they didn't respect the American people enough to say that they chose a leader. Let the leader lead, and if his policies fail, let them fail. No, what happened is you stopped.
He's appointed Supreme Court justices. He's passed the largest legislation in America.
I'm fine with Supreme Court justices, but basically,
what did he not get that he wanted?
Well, cap and trade, Jobs Act, the Dream Act.
He won't even pass his own commission suggestions. He won't even pass his own advisors.
You mean the one that Paul Ryan sat on and voted against?
It's true. He did. Politics makes strange
you mean the one that the Republicans,
reversals,
where there were 22 or so senators who supported the commission, and then as soon as Obama supported it, jumped ship and were against it?
You understand the game.
The Republicans have put roadblocks in Obama's way ever since day one.
Which the system allows for.
Ever since
checks
day one.
And balances.
Ever since day one. You're right. And then, now, Romney is complaining Obama didn't succeed. He didn't lead. We stopped him every step of the way. We kept tripping him up and throwing banana peels and knocking the man down. And oh my God, he didn't get his agenda passed. We can't trust him to be president.
But he did. He got
That's amazing.
He got TARP
That's
too.
like me putting you in handcuffs
and
then saying, how come you can't lift this table? You're like, I'm in handcuffs. I'm like, stop with the handcuffs. Why aren't you doing this after I put you in handcuffs?
I don't think that stump speech you're talking about is the one Obama gives to donors. I don't think he talks about failures. I think he talks about legislative triumphs, successes, an agenda.
I think he should. Harry Truman in 1948, to mention the one campaign that was turned around, he ran against the do-nothing Congress.
Right.
And he pointed out that I would do all these things, but Congress has stopped me. I think Obama should do that.
I think it'd be hard for a man.
Clear
I think it'd be hard for a sitting president who was, as a senator, voted present more often than anything else. I think it'd be hard for a man to make an argument about a do-nothing Congress. About a man who's always campaigned for the next office.
There's a difference between even a do-nothing Congress and a just-say-no Congress. And my question for you is, if this president is reelected, is it time that Americans come together and say, look, Obama proposed a grand bargain to Speaker Boehner, some $4 trillion in spending,
we're not going to get into Bob Woodward's book, are we?
You know what
Bob recorded. I mean, Obama spiked the deal at the last moment. He asked for one more concession that Boehner couldn't get, and Boehner wouldn't have given, even if he could have.
Boehner has said, Mitt Romney has said, every single Republican candidate on the stage, including Rick Perry,
a presidential primary is not the place to ask serious questions like that. Are you kidding me? They're playing to the base.
Let's just say what they said, and then you can tell me that they didn't mean what they said.
Right.
What they said was, if we gave $10 in spending cuts,
I saw them all raise their hands.
For every $1 in tax cuts, could you agree with that? Right. If you couldn't agree with that, raise your hands. And they said no, they couldn't agree to a 10-to-1 compromise.
Right.
When is it time for the Republican Party to put forward a serious candidate that tells the American people the truth? Maybe that's Paul Ryan. I don't know. But it's certainly not Mitt Romney.
I think it's more likely Rand Paul. I think it's more likely a 2016 candidate who will really be
Rand Paul
honest.
can't win over the Wall Street crowd. Your party is not just libertarians.
It's not.
Your party is
It's not at
business
all.
interests.
Absolutely it
and
is.
They don't like Rand
Rand
Paul.
is not wrong. Let's be clear. Rand is not. Does
He's
not
a
come with all the
softer,
baggage.
kinder,
He's a more
younger
telegenic.
version of
Absolutely.
Ron Paul.
Absolutely.
But I don't know that his fundamental philosophy is that different from
Give
his
him some
father's.
time. Give him some time and messaging and years in office.
So what do you do now? You hold your nose and cry and vote for Mitt Romney.
I will vote for
presume.
Mitt Romney because I believe in a less governed, a less centralized state. I believe in a less, a slower growth of government. I think Obama fundamentally, as his leaked video this week said, I believe in redistribution. As he told Joe the plumber, it's better when you spread it around.
In 1998.
This is what he believes. This is who the man is. He's a community organizer.
Well, let's talk about redistribution.
Yeah.
Okay. Mitt Romney's father and mother took redistribution of wealth. Did you see that, by the way?
I did.
That video of Lenore Romney, sweet woman in the 1960s, wearing
and I've heard
that
Michelle
60s clothing
and Ann go back
on the
and
couch.
forth. I was poor, you were poor.
Right. And she says, my husband came as an immigrant from Mexico, and we were on public assistance for a few years, and he built this empire from that. And Obama's mother was on welfare. Bill Clinton's mother was on welfare.
Virginia Kelly.
So where is this idea that no one can be successful after being on welfare when we have Mitt Romney, Barack Obama, and Bill Clinton, all of whose parents were at one time on welfare? Maybe welfare is what we say it is, not a permanent underclass entitled to food and shelter, but a temporary way for someone to get back on their feet. What's so wrong with that?
I think it can be. I think the ethos of what you're talking about, I think America's changed in the decades since then. Everybody knows the numbers, 45 million on food stamps right now, and you can argue chicken and egg, whether the economy caused that or whether these folks
But is
are
that
doing this.
should we deny them food stamps? Should people go hungry?
No one should starve. But
Okay.
My God, Mark, you've got a system here of EBT,
why are you complaining about the food stamps?
debit cards that can be abused by anyone for any purchase anywhere.
But why complain about the food stamps? Why not complain about the poverty in America? Why not complain about the income inequality? Why not complain about the conditions that cause Americans to go on food stamps?
Conservatives talk about this a lot.
It seems to me that the problem is not that you're letting people eat. The problem is the conditions that cause people to need the public assistance
And we would
in the
argue
first place.
the policies of the large pro-growth state is behind that. We argue that it's better for everyone.
And
to
I
make
would
their own
argue
way.
it's outsourcing people like Mitt Romney, who's taking jobs overseas
pioneer.
and helping Wall Street make a lot of money while the rest of us eat the crumbs. I would argue it's trickle-down economics that leads to that great poverty.
Both sides are part of the ruling class. I think both sides.
But here's my point.
I mean, if you want to get into NAFTA and globalization, you got to go all the way back to Bush 1 and Clinton and all that.
My point is this. Conservatives complain about the remedies.
Right.
They complain about the food stamps.
Right.
Rather than complain about the more complicated underlying conditions that cause poverty, which I'm more than willing to have that discussion, but instead I hear food stamp president.
Yeah.
I hear these one-liners as if food stamps are wrong. I think food stamps
They're
are
not
a good
inherently
thing.
wrong.
I think they are a necessary thing.
Conservatives-
I think without them, people would starve in America.
That's probably true, unfortunately, because the America that we want to come back is one where communities, where families, where friends, where charities, where churches
but they're not enough.
take care of one another.
They've never been enough.
Are there?
They've
Are
never
they
been
not? Are
enough.
they not?
You can look at any time in American history. You go back 100 years.
Right.
Any time. Churches try, and I'm glad they do.
Yeah.
And they do wonderful things, but they don't come
We
near.
always think the solution is private. We always
but
do.
they never do it all. You can
But
look at the
we think that's
1960s,
because people know there's an
1890s.
alternative. They know there's a way to go.
All right. Well, we want to give our
Do that.
viewers a chance to call in and add their 2 cents. You're welcome to do so. Just call 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. You can join the discussion back after this.
Too many women get hit by their boyfriends and husbands. Too many women are pressured into having unprotected sex. Half of the people in the world living with AIDS are women. It doesn't have to be this way. Together, we can change this reality. Let's strive for a world free of violence.
At Volunteers of America, we don't just give kids a way to stay off the streets. We give them the tools they need to reach their full potential. We don't just help the elderly receive needed care. We help them live life to the fullest. We don't just provide food for homeless individuals and families. We provide job training and placement so they can buy groceries. Volunteers of America is a national organization that for over 100 years has provided programs and services that allow people to overcome their challenges to become vital members of their community. At Volunteers of America, we don't just help people, we help people help themselves. Find out how you can support the programs that are working in your community. Contact Volunteers of America today. Call 1-800-899-0089.
Drivers face all kinds of distractions.
Guys, stop playing. No, of 127 consecutive.
Before your wireless phone becomes one of them, stop. Drive safely. Keep your phone in easy reach and dial sensibly. In bad weather or traffic, call later and use a hands-free device. Remember, with wireless, safety is your call.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. We are 6 weeks away from the election, just on the cusp of really the last event that I think can really affect the campaign. Absent an October surprise, like a crazy jobs number or something crazy happening in the Middle East or elsewhere, a terrorist attack or something like that, things over which neither candidate has any control, to be sure. The only thing that's left in this campaign season to change things that the candidates can control, and again, October surprises are very rare, is the debates. And the debates are coming up, with the first debate being October 3rd, which is just next week. I think that's Wednesday. So let me ask you, what does Mitt Romney need to do? You were complaining about some things about President Obama.
Right.
What does Mitt Romney need to do in the debates to call the voters' attention, to give him some more momentum in the race, Matt?
I believe, you have to have an air war and a ground war. American majority, we spend every single day teaching people how to wage the ground war and the tactical grassroots hardwiring of precincts. So I want to talk about that in a minute. I want to talk about how...
You mean calling people, getting to the polls, that kind of thing.
Right. And I think we can agree this is going to be a very close election in about 7 places. Really, you can say 7 states, but you're really talking about 7 regions of 7 states.
I agree it will be closer than 2008. I actually think that Obama will get well over 300 electoral votes. In fact, I predict 332
There are more paths
votes
for Obama, but I think in the actual Electoral College March, it's going to be very much like 2004. It's going to be an eked out victory for whomever gets across that finish line.
I think he will lose only Indiana and North Carolina, and under that, get the exact same states he got in 2008.
No, sir. He will not get Virginia. Not at all.
I think he will get Virginia.
We'll come back to
I think he will get Virginia, and I think my good friend Congressman Virgil Good is going to help us in that.
A nice kick in the pants.
And we'll talk about that too. But go ahead, make your point about the debates.
Romney needs to come out and unapologetically just throw his shoulders back and be himself. He needs to find that voice. As I've heard it, I heard it in the biographical piece at the convention.
That wasn't his voice. That was other people talking about him.
You can see who the identity is. You can see who the man is. You can see the man from the father. The story doesn't get told. The story doesn't get told about Mitt Romney divesting himself of his father's fortune and making his own way in the world. That does not get told. The charity does not get told. The public service does not get told. Romney needs to come out and talk about the exact specific things he's going to do. The 12 million jobs he's going to create.
That's what I want.
The rates he's going to lower.
Tell you, I don't think it's biography. I don't think people doubt
that
he's a decent man.
It's a part of the debate.
He put his dog on the roof. But other than that, he's got 5 grown sons, a nice wife. No one is attacking him.
But he's got to flesh it out with some pizzazz.
I think he needs to tell American people what he would do as president.
He will. He has to.
How can he not?
It's Hail Mary time.
How can he have a convention and not do that?
Right. We all wondered that. We did.
So what will he? So here's my question. Let's talk about taxes, because that's the main issue Americans talking about. Mitt Romney's plan. Let me get this straight.
Have you read all 58 pages of it?
I have not. But frankly, a lot of it's pablum, so I think it's okay.
A lot of it's warmed over from previous
it really
campaigns.
Is. So he wants to give $5 trillion in tax cuts over the next 10 years to people who earn $250,000 or more. And he wants to increase defense spending. And he says he's not going to raise taxes on the middle class to do it, but he's going to close loopholes, which will have
reform is the key.
Which will have the effect of raising taxes on the middle class.
Is the key.
But he won't tell us what loopholes he will close.
And God forbid that he's talking about mortgage deductions.
At the end of the day, his own advisors have said, in order to get that kind of massive tax increase to the millionaires, you're going to have to end the mortgage interest deduction. You have to end the child deduction.
Right.
You're going to basically have to raise tax on the middle class $2,000 each to make that kind of money, or you can blow a huge hole in the deficit. It's got to be one or the other. Which do you think?
I think there's a third way.
What's the third way?
Again,
magical economic growth.
No. I think once again we've got a case of Mitt not really saying exactly what he believes.
Okay, what do you think he really believes?
I mean, as wealthy as he is, but I don't think he's willing to go all the way to the mat for those tax cuts, for those further tax cuts for those billionaires and millionaires that you're talking about.
So he's saying
I don't think he means it.
Oh, okay.
I don't. I think everybody on the right is fairly exhausted by these Bush tax cuts and is willing, unlike Grover Norquist, is willing to let them expire. A tax fadeaway is not a tax increase.
You think, as I do, that, and I think
not as Americans do, as common sense people do.
I think most Americans realize, and I think it'll happen. I think it'll happen after President Obama is reelected, but prior to his taking office. that we will, just to avoid the fiscal cliff, we're going to repeal a bunch of these tax cuts.
I think you have to. I think it's been a decade-long program. You got what you got. I don't think there's any more to be squeezed out of this turnip. I really don't. And I think Mitt knows that. I think his advisor. I think it's very cynical on their part.
To hear a conservative say that. Are they going to have to break their pledge to Grover Norquist?
I don't know that Mitt ever signed it.
Well, but Congress has to do this. I mean, this is not a question for Mitt Romney. This is a question for your party.
You're talking 218 people who have signed it.
Let me suggest you there's a way out. Here's the way out for your party. No, I'm going to give you a way. No, you're going to do what we say, but we're going to do it without angering the god of Grover Norquist. Here's what you do.
He's a tiny tin
Here's what you do. You allow us to go off the fiscal cliff for one day. By doing that, and you announce you're going to do this ahead of time so the markets don't get it and everyone get all scared. We go off the fiscal cliff for one day. The rates automatically get jacked up due to nobody's fault other than the people who voted for them.
This sounds very Washington.
And then you vote to cut them, but not as far as they were before. And then you say, I voted to cut taxes, not raise them. You let them go up automatically, and then you cut them in half.
That's pretty.
What do you think?
That's pretty canny.
I should work for some of these think tanks here.
You should. That's very jaded and very Washington.
I did work as an attorney on the Hill.
I know. 10 years,
I know. Yeah. Well, not that long, but I know how these games work.
Yes.
But at the end of the day,
the losers are the American people.
So you don't think Mitt Romney's going to give tax cuts at all?
I think he might give lip service to it. He might push a few or sustain a few. I don't think he's going to go for the radical.
But he doesn't dare say that before the election.
He can't.
Can he say it now? He's on the ropes. He's desperate. Can he say it now?
No. You got to follow Nixon's advice. You got to run as far to the right as you can during the primary, and then run like hell back to the center.
But this would be a run back to the center to say that maybe we can't afford all these tax cuts.
He still can't do it because that base that never trusted him in the first place won't turn out for him if he goes back on that. If he goes wobbly like Thatcher said.
They'll all vote for Congressman Virgil Goode in Virginia.
They will not vote. They will stay home like they did in 2008. They will.
Interesting.
It'll be suppression on our side.
Okay, so the tax cuts aren't really part of the Romney agenda. He talks about repealing Obamacare, but let's face it, as much as you hate Obamacare...
Well, he's gone back on that too.
There's no way in heck he can... Well, he has gone back on that. He's actually said, I actually like certain elements of it.
Well, he wrote the damn thing.
He did in Massachusetts, and in fact, he said that... let's face it, he can't repeal it. You would have to have 60 votes in the Senate to repeal it. There's no way he's going to have 60 votes.
I think there's some pretty arcane funding mechanisms and ways and procedures to do it, to defund some parts of it.
Okay, so you can attack it obliquely rather than directly.
Absolutely.
All right. You don't think he'd actually do that, though, as president, do you?
I think he would allow Mitch McConnell to do it. I think he would sign something that's palatable from the Senate.
Well, he couldn't sign it because the Senate wouldn't produce it because the Democrats would then filibuster it, and you wouldn't get 60 votes. So, I mean, let's face it, it's impossible to repeal Obamacare.
Oh, I'm not going to say impossible. I'm going to say it's absent
a 60-vote Republican majority in the Senate, which I think we can all agree is about as likely as
I still think there's
lightning hitting this in the next 2 seconds.
I still think there's some voodoo in that old McConnell. I do. I think there's some ways to play.
But this won't be a big thing for Romney.
No, it won't.
Okay, so he's not going to be big on the tax cuts. He's not going to be big on health care. Self-deportation? Is he going to do anything in the immigration front to kick Latinos out?
I think he'll probably do the same things Obama's been doing.
Okay, so
deporting them at a higher level than anybody else.
What would so you're telling me he's not going to do anything on all these prime agendas? What actually will Romney do if he becomes president that's different substantially from the current president?
I think he will manage the economy. I think he will get the Wall Street investors off the sidelines. I think they
are off the sidelines. We have the largest Dow Jones.
We talked about this a few shows ago.
We have the largest stock market in American history. And you know who caused it?
Who?
Ben Bernanke, the chairman of the Fed.
Yeah, he print more money, right?
He printed more money, and lo and behold,
that's the cure.
Lo and behold, we have the highest stock market ever in American history.
Everybody's speculating. Everybody's selling short. It's a racket.
No, they're not selling short. It's the opposite. They're buying.
You're right.
The market's high.
You're right.
Okay, so it's not the market that's waiting for Mitt Romney.
Oh, I think it is. I think there's
what are they waiting for?
Are you
telling me that people aren't hiring people because of Obama?
I think there's a great sense
of uncertainty. Explain to me how that works.
I think there's a great sense of uncertainty and almost a phobia about the radical changes they've seen in the past few years. They don't understand what's happening. They don't understand the growth of government. They don't understand.
These very smart businessmen can't understand what's happening.
Those people understand. The consumer class, the 80 million Americans who make up that middle class you talked about, they don't know.
No, but consumers are doing well. Consumer confidence is higher now.
Consumers are not spending. Consumers are saving and paying down debt.
You should see the recent polls I've seen.
Saving and paying down debt.
They're saving and paying down.
Because they're scared and uncertain.
You're talking more about a year and 2 years ago. You're absolutely right.
No,
two years ago. I
just saw this Sunday.
Most recently, I saw polls this Sunday too that showed consumer confidence higher than at any time in Obama's presidency.
I don't think they're plunking down their plastic. I don't think they're spending their money, and that's the American economy.
Well, let me suggest to you that they will plunk down plastic.
And so those giant firms, they're not selling.
Here's the solution. They will plunk down their
have
plastic.
it all figured out.
I do. They plunk down their plastic.
Yeah.
If we extend middle-class tax cuts while showing we're going to pay the deficit back by raising taxes on the super rich, that's something that would keep that middle-class spending, and they'd say, okay, we're okay. We're not going to be taxed because they're taxing the rich guys. We can spend money. The rich guys will keep spending because, you know, they have all the money they need for Olympic horses and car elevators.
Right.
So
dressage.
This is the Obama tax plan, right? Keep middle-class taxes low and raise taxes on the millionaires.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that?
I think lots of things are wrong with that. I think you don't punish people, and I think we failed.
Punish?
We failed to define at the
How
start.
is paying for government
failed to
punishment?
define at the start. Well, that's a whole philosophical disagreement.
I don't think it's
there.
punishment. I think most Americans recognize that.
I think most Americans feel
we
like
drive
they're
on
paying
roads
too much for government.
You know, I don't think so today. I don't think so today.
My effective rate was 31% last year. And
well, you're
I don't
paying
make a lot
3
of money.
times what Mitt Romney is.
Yeah, I am.
Maybe you
but
need
Mitt
better
Romney's
accountants.
already been taxed on that money. He already earned that income the first time.
No, he didn't.
Investment income.
That's different.
Capital gains.
That's different.
All these things.
That's additional income.
I don't think he's not clocking in at Bain Capital.
If you own $100 million in stock and it increases to $150 million, you're not taxed on the original $100 million, only an additional $50 million.
I understand.
So don't tell me he's already earned that
Where did they
money.
get the capital to sink into that stuff, those investments? That's what we're talking about.
Well,
the initiative and
if
drive
you
to
care
start
about
that.
America, you invest in America. If you don't, you put it in Swiss bank accounts, which brings me up to another point I have, which is why I don't believe Mitt Romney is releasing his tax returns from 2009.
Why?
Mitt Romney has been running for president.
Harry Reid was right.
Not quite.
Not quite.
Mitt Romney's been running for president, as you point out, for 5 years, since 2007. He's had more than enough time to direct his accountants to make his taxes
amend his returns,
to make his taxes look pretty for the American people.
Right.
And yet he insists he will not release more than 2 years of taxes. He will not go back beyond 2010, even though there hasn't been a winning presidential candidate in 50 years that has released less than 5 years of tax returns. Most release 10, some release 5. No winning candidate has ever released less than 5.
Okay.
Here is my reason why he's not releasing it. In 2009, there was a whistleblower at UBS Bank in Switzerland.
I know the story.
Bradley Birkenfeld is his name. And Americans for decades, very wealthy Americans, and not just Americans, dictators all over the globe, very rich people
with money,
have been putting money in Swiss bank accounts in secret numbered accounts. And under Swiss law, they could never disclose who had those bank accounts. And they did it whether they were a dictator to hide money or they were a wealthy American to avoid paying taxes. And we know, because Mitt Romney's tax return showed 2010, that he had Swiss bank accounts. Now, let me finish my story.
This is all legal.
Let me finish my story.
This is all perfectly legal.
It was illegal to commit tax fraud and not pay your taxes. However, in 2009, this is true, look it up, when Bradley Birkenfeld exposed thousands of Americans who'd been cheating on their taxes, the IRS made a deal with these wealthy Americans. And they said, if you pay back everything you owe, including all your back taxes and penalties, in 2009, we won't criminally prosecute you.
This is quite a theory.
Mitt Romney, had he been cheating on his taxes prior in 2009, could have paid it all back in 2009, would not be cheating today, would not be a criminal today if he all paid it back in 2009, and all that would show up on his secret 2009 tax returns. I believe, can't prove it, I believe that Mitt Romney would show in 2009 he got Swiss bank amnesty.
Quite a theory. And I'm sure we have every penny accounted for all of Obama's millions and his autobiographies and books.
I haven't heard any challenge on
because
that
the press gives him a pass. I'm not defending Mitt Romney's tax.
When we come back, I want to know.
It's perfectly legal, though.
It's legal now. I don't think it was legal before 2009. Folks, if you want to join the debate, it's easy to do. Just pick up the phone and dial 888-488-MARK. It's your last chance. 888-488-6275. We'll be right back after this.
Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about ringtown fight. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Yeah.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home? When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water. At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site. That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff. You know what the best part is?
What?
More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow.
maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent!
Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
Here again, the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. This is our last segment here. I am very thankful to have as a very honest conservative guest. I got to say, Matt Robbins, the executive director of Americans for a New Majority. You've been, frankly, down on Mitt Romney from the beginning, and a lot of your fears, I think, have come to roost. I'm not saying the election's over. People need to get out there.
It's unfortunate we have not had a better champion of the true conservative message. It's unfortunate we've had this career sort of politician who's just wanted to seek office. And I would say that about Obama as well as Romney. I think you've got two very cynical and very sort of soulless guys here running for president.
Obviously, I would disagree on Obama. But let me go. I want to play a little bit of the most famous part of the Mitt Romney clip that we've all seen a piece of. This is him at a $50,000 a plate fundraiser, I think in California, in May. Do we have time on that?
Entitled to health care, to food, to housing, to you name it. But it's an entitlement, and the government should give it to them. And
okay, so you hear his point. Basically, 47% of Americans believe they are entitled to health care. And this is an interesting chart put out by those to show exactly who are the 47%. Basically, I'll just describe it to you. 2/3 of that 40, of half Americans don't pay federal income tax. 2/3 of them pay payroll taxes.
Right.
So that's 2/3 of them.
We've
right
had
there.
this argument before.
Of the 1/3 of the half, so 1/6 that don't pay federal income taxes or payroll taxes, half of them are elderly on Social Security. That leaves about a 1/12. The 1/12, 90% or more of those happen to be people who make under $20,000 a year. So there's really only 1% of Americans that do not pay payroll tax, do not pay federal income tax. It does. Are not elderly on Social Security or are not making under $20,000 a year. Do you think the elderly should pay more if they're living on Social Security?
No, they paid into the program, and that's even Paul Ryan agrees with that.
Okay, do you think that people who make under $20,000 a year
I don't want to get
level?
I'm not going to play the game of getting into the devolution here and the dissection. Romney made a messaging mistake. He conflated a 47% number of Americans who don't pay federal income tax. We can have that argument about what they do pay. We've had that before, and we'll have it again, I feel. Romney stepped on his own message, got in his own way again, from a communications point of view, and threw out what he thought was some red meat to those donors, and got it completely wrong. And then it gets leaked, and it looks horrible, and it sounds horrible because it is horrible. It doesn't even make sense.
Okay, you don't have to
on its face.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, it doesn't.
No, all right.
But that's all it is. It was a tactical communications mistake. The 47% he's talking about is this ever-expanding sort of class of people who are, in one form or another, taking aid from the government. And we can argue again about the philosophy of that. But that is not a Republican belief.
Let's talk about the philosophy of that. No, but let's talk about the conservative belief because, so veterans, they obviously take from the government and the Veteran Administration. You're not going to attack
veterans serve and risk their lives.
Absolutely. Okay, students. Right. They get student loans from the government. Most of them go on to pay those loans back and do well. It's an investment in the future. Okay, Social Security, elderly, Medicare, they get money from the government, but they put money in to begin with. So, I don't know, agricultural subsidies, I'll agree with you that those are wrong.
I'm with you on that.
I'll agree that the corporate welfare is wrong.
Cut that too. But stadiums, tax breaks for counties and
let's talk about stadiums. Let's talk about stadiums.
It's insane.
One of the things I found funniest was to watch the Republicans at the Times, what was the name of that stadium in Tampa?
Yeah, I forget the name.
Times,
$64 million
built
private-public partnership.
It was built mostly with public funds.
Right.
Talking about how public funds can't do anything. Right. You and I drove on public roads to get to this place.
I drive on toll roads most of the time now.
And there's going to be a new one on the way here. But at the end of the day, I think Americans recognize that there are things that the government does well, and we should distinguish.
I don't know about that last word. does well. I don't think the administration of social benefits, the administration of Medicare and Medicaid,
really, because
is
Medicare
efficient.
has a 2 to 3%
right
efficiency where it goes to pay for the people.
I've seen the 60 Minutes reports. The fraud is rampant.
Well, no, but health insurance companies, they pay 20, 25, 30% in profits. Medicare is 10 times more efficient than private health insurance. And you may argue about the 3%, but can't we argue about the 30%?
Maybe, but we're paying billions of dollars in fraud, and just outright fraud that we don't even have the IGs.
No one supports fraud.
I know that.
I guarantee you, President Obama does not support fraud. Democrats don't support fraud.
A private firm would be cracking down on that, whereas a government watchdog is not doing it.
I don't think they're cracking down at all. As we've seen, private insurance companies charge 10 times in administrative costs.
That's what I'm saying. They're going to get their money. The government's not concerned about recouping their outlays like a private company is. I mean, a private company may bilk you, but the government is not going to.
But that doesn't. Okay, but at the end of the day, it's cheaper for the consumer of health insurance
and the quality
to get it
is
lesser. From the public sphere.
And the quality is lesser.
Not really, because I'll tell you something. They did a poll of people on Medicare. 94% of people on Medicare. That's my favorite statistic. 94% of people on Medicare like Medicare. 94%.
I'm sure they do.
I don't think 94% of Americans agree on anything.
If it's their only option, I'm sure they do. If it's their only option for health care, I'm sure.
No, you know what? Medicare, they don't have to get it. They could go to the private insurance.
It's sort of understood now. It's sort of bundled in with the AARP card and all that stuff.
They don't have to.
They don't have to.
They want to.
It's a cultural norm.
It's cheaper.
It's a cultural norm.
So how does a true conservative like yourself, how do you deal with the fact that Americans like their Social Security, like their Medicare, like their roads, like their student loans, like their veterans benefits? How do you deal with the fact that some aspects of government people like?
This is where leadership comes in, because a true leader, a true conservative champion, like Ronald Reagan, like Barry Goldwater before him, would talk about, to the American public space, you cannot have everything you want.
Why not?
You cannot break the bank. You cannot break the U.S. Treasury.
We're doing fine. We had it under Bill Clinton.
We're doing fine right now? Are you kidding me?
We did it under Bill Clinton.
You're telling me we're doing fine right now. That's 20 years ago.
It's 13 years ago.
Okay. You're telling me we're doing fine right now. We're not.
We're not doing fine, I would argue, because of income inequality in this country. We're not doing
that's
fine.
That's antecedent on which we disagree. I mean, we all think that the
I
root
think
of
Wall
all
Street,
American problems.
I think, honestly, there's something called rich men's rules in this country. And that rich men get to play, and women, get to play by certain rules the rest of us don't get to play by. They get rich man's justice. They get rich men's guaranteed profits in Wall Street.
I don't think it's a matter of wealth. I think it's a matter of political power, political
But they have the political power. Ever since Students United, they have the political
power.
Unions
are not necessarily wealthy. I mean, teachers are not necessarily wealthy.
Unions are suffering right now.
They are,
Scott Walker's done very well.
They've run the table for about 60 years prior to that.
I don't think many union people will tell you that they feel very powerful right now. I would argue
not at the moment.
I would argue unions are weaker and have been made progressively weaker.
Which I think is a good thing.
Decade after decade since the 1960s. I don't think it's a good thing.
I think this blue state model, this post-World War II industrial model that Walter Russell Mead talks about all the time, it's a dinosaur. Its days are long gone, and we've just failed to bury the beast.
What is your view of what is harming the nation's economy right now?
I think the confidence. I think there's an esoteric, really just intangible part of the American psyche that has to feel secure, whether it's their personal feelings for the president. They're sort of a father-in-chief to all of us, and Reagan played the grandfather-in-chief to many of us. And Romney looks like a president.
Bill Clinton was our big brother.
Bill Clinton was the brother you hope doesn't get too drunk at the wedding.
But is very competent in running your
He was competent with his policy sides at times.
But here's my point. I would argue Americans...
No, let me finish.
Okay, go ahead.
You've got to have that confidence. And ever since this sort of strange, upstart young president with a strange name, and it's not racial and it's not biased, it's just different, and came in and did all these sort of large programs and large ideas.
I wouldn't even bring up his name. What's the point?
Oh, come on. It's completely different than any other president prior to him. You can't ignore that fact, Mark.
What does it have to do with his policies? He should be judged on his policies, not his name.
And he is. I think the American people gave him a tremendous chance that first year, and he said, here you go. Here's the health care program that I want. Here's not the illegal immigration program that I told you I was going to get.
As I recall, he let Congress mostly devise the health care program.
Rahm was driving the train. I mean, Rahm was behind the wheel. So, I mean, that's...
I like Rahm Emanuel.
You're in a definite minority on that one.
There's some Chicago teachers that aren't so happy with him.
Exactly. But I think it's all tied in. Consumer confidence, feeling that America's going in the right direction.
That you're talking
this stuff keeps the giant banks, the giant investors, the giant productions on the sidelines.
If the issue is consumer confidence, you have to concede that in the late 1990s under Bill Clinton, consumer confidence was through the roof. Those were good times. Those were happy times.
A little thing called the internet was being created at the time.
So now, I would argue that consumer confidence was damaged in 2007 and 2008.
Absolutely.
Under George Bush.
Absolutely.
Giving us the worst depression since the Great Depression. I would argue the reason why it's low is because it's been slowly coming out of that damage caused by your party.
The president has made it worse.
He's made it worse?
Layering in
Let me
big
tell you something. We are better off than we were 4 years ago.
Layering in big government programs was not the right move at that time.
Layering in big government programs?
It was not.
You're talking about the healthcare program?
I am talking about healthcare, the largest single expenditure in American legislative history.
What
projected
does
deficits to the moon.
It gives everyone in America health care.
And every time it's reevaluated by CBO or anyone, the projections are $4, $6, $8 trillion off every single time, every 6 months, 9 months.
Wow. There's been all kinds of projections. Right. The first projections they showed that he was going to save $1 trillion over 20 years.
This program's going to
we will see how much it does. But I don't think.
And I hope I'm wrong.
I don't think it's health care.
It's not just health care. It was TARP 2. It was the stimulus. It was health care. It was spending on wars.
The thing that saved the auto companies? Was it a bad idea to save GM?
We've argued about this before.
Do you think General Motors should have gone bankrupt?
You can't trade in our share values right now. It's in the toilet. The share values.
But 1 million people have jobs. We should care more than share values.
You have to let some things. Look at what Ford did. Ford went with a private capital route, a private, not a bankruptcy, but close to it. And now the Ford is selling better than anyone on the planet.
Well. Chrysler's
they did not
doing
ask
well.
for a government
General
handout, but
Motors.
everybody else went with a handout. Why can't you do it on your own? That's all the conservatives ask.
Because if
Why can't you do it on your own?
If General Motors had gone bankrupt, we would have lost 1 million jobs that we could never have gotten back. Instead, we gave them the Band-Aid.
So too big to fail applies everywhere.
It's kind of like Mitt Romney. That's not just too big to fail. Mitt Romney's parents were on welfare.
You're talking about when you talk about carve-outs and rich man's justice. You're talking about industries and unions.
I'm talking about
Americans of all stripes are sick of that game. They don't want anybody getting special treatment, including GM.
I'm talking about a safety net. I'm talking about safety
Nobody
net
argues with
for
safety
people, whether it's welfare or workers that need a job. I'll tell you who doesn't need the bailouts is that I want to see Wall Street fail.
Right.
I want to see the bankers who have millions and millions of dollars.
I'll help you squirt lighter fluid on them.
We'll do the same thing.
Yeah.
And if Bain Capital fails, they should lose money rather than structure these deals so they never lose money. But General Motors was never about the corporation General Motors. I don't give a damn about the corporation. It was about the million American workers all the way down from the people who build the cars to the people who sell the cars and sell auto parts. And Ohio and Michigan are doing well today because of We Save GM. And I would argue for you that President Obama wins Ohio substantially, not even close, 3 or 4 points. Because of the auto bailout, that will be the key to his winning re-election in Ohio.
I'll take that bet.
All right, we'll find out.
I'll definitely accept that one.
Are we going to bet real money?
Yeah, steak dinner.
Steak dinner?
Absolutely.
All right, I bet steak dinner that Barack Obama wins Ohio.
I say we get it.
All right, well,
Ohio
we'll find
and
out.
Virginia we get.
I say we win Ohio
we lose
and
Pennsylvania. We keep
of course,
Carolina.
you're not arguing that Romney's going to win this election, are you?
Who?
Romney.
No, I'm just saying we're gonna get awfully close.
Okay, but you still think Obama's going to win?
I think Obama's going to win. I think all the.
I think he's going to win as well. I think he's going to win Ohio and Virginia
Romney has
and
one
Wisconsin.
path to the electoral college numbers he needs.
Yeah, it's a very
one
tiny
state,
path.
we're done.
I think we can win in Virginia. I think Virgil Good will pull some votes. Conservatives, you want to vote for a real conservative? Vote for Congressman
Constitution
Virgil
Party.
Good. He is someone who absolutely is solid on your issues as a conservative.
Virgil's crazy.
Well, he's a solid conservative, isn't he?
Virgil's been a Democrat, an independent, a Republican,
but a conservative all the time. I hope you enjoyed the show, folks. If you want to find out more about the Inside Scoop, go to my website, marklevinetalk.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at MarkLevineTalk. I want to thank Matt for coming here and having a very interesting discussion.
Lively.
And you can watch other video of other Inside Scoops and my radio show all on my website.